For 6 years the girl rubbed her left eye. Every single day. Hard enough to leave marks. Doctors all said the same thing. Born blind. Nothing can be done. Her father spent a fortune chasing miracles across 3 continents. Then a night cleaner noticed something no one else ever had. Something hidden behind the child's eye. And what she pulled out would shatter everything those doctors believed. If you're watching this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I believe this story found you today for a reason. Now let's get to the story. Elias Montreux was one of the richest men in Europe. Tech empires that stretched across 5 countries. Private islands most people only see in magazines. Headlines written in gold ink. But inside his glass and marble estate overlooking Lake Geneva, there was no color, no joy, no light, only darkness. His daughter, Lyra Montreux, had never seen a single thing. Not her father's face. Not the mountains outside her window. Not even light itself. The Montreux estate was beautiful from the outside. Floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected the lake like mirrors. Marble hallways polished so clean you could see your reflection. Gardens trimmed by specialists who flew in from France. But inside, silence. Not the peaceful kind. Not the kind that feels like rest. The silence was suffocating. Heavy. Like something had died and no one had the courage to bury it. Staff moved through the hallways without speaking. Their footsteps were careful, calculated. They'd learned quickly that Mr. Montreux preferred quiet. No music played in that house. No television noise. No laughter echoing off the walls. Just silence. And somewhere in that silence, a father was drowning. Elias sat in his study most evenings, staring at the portrait above the fireplace. There she was, Seraphine, his wife. Her smile frozen in oil paint. Her eyes still bright, still alive. Next to her, a younger version of himself. Looking hopeful, looking whole. And between them, Lyra. 3 years old in the portrait. Before Elias understood that his daughter would never see her mother's face. Seraphine died the night Lyra was born. Complications, the doctors called it. Rare. Unpredictable. Words that meant nothing when the love of your life was bleeding out in front of you. Elias held her hand while the light left her eyes. She'd been trying to say something. Her lips moved but no sound came out. Just like their daughter. By morning, Elias was a widower holding a baby who wouldn't open her eyes. The doctors said it was congenital blindness. Retinal failure. Optic nerve damage. Words stacked on words until all hope suffocated beneath them. Accept it, they told him. Elias never did. He couldn't accept that his daughter would live in darkness forever. He couldn't accept that Lyra would never hear him say, "Your mother loved you more than anything in this world." So he did the only thing he knew how to do. He spent money. Millions of dollars. Zurich labs with machines that looked like they belonged in science fiction. Boston specialists who charged more per hour than most people earned in a month. Tel Aviv research centers. Singapore clinical trials. Flights across oceans. Hotels that cost more per night than most families spent on rent. Every doctor said the same thing. Irreversible. Permanent. Genetic. You need to accept this, Mr. Montreux. Accept it? How could he accept that his only child, the last piece of his wife he had left, would never see the world? So Elias kept searching. Kept writing checks. Kept begging God for an answer. What he didn't know was that the answer wasn't coming from a hospital. It was coming from someone he'd never think to look at twice. Someone who was about to walk through his door with nothing but tired eyes and bills she couldn't pay. Her name was Maribel. And she was about to change everything. Maribel Kova arrived on a Thursday evening in late autumn. The sky was gray, the kind of gray that makes everything feel colder than it should. She stood at the service entrance of the Montreux estate, clutching her bag with both hands, trying to steady her breathing. This was it. Her last chance. Back in her small apartment across town, bills were piling up on her kitchen table like a tower she couldn't stop from growing. Rent. Utilities. Her brother's school tuition. 3 months behind. That's what the letter said. If she didn't pay, her younger brother would have to drop out. After everything they'd survived, after losing their parents in that factory fire 2 years ago, she couldn't let him lose his future too. Her brother was 17. Smart. So smart it hurt sometimes. He deserved better than the life their parents had. Better than 12-hour shifts in places that didn't care if you lived or died. Maribel had promised her mother, in those final moments before the smoke took her, that she'd take care of him. So she took this job. Night cleaner at a billionaire's mansion. She didn't care about the fancy address. Didn't care about the wealthy family living behind those glass walls. She cared about the paycheck. And she had no idea that tonight, her life was about to collide with a little girl who'd been living in darkness for 6 years. A little girl whose father had spent millions searching for hope. A little girl whose miracle was about to come from the most unlikely place. Elias Montreux kept a file in his study. 3 inches thick. Medical reports from 17 countries. Each one said the same thing in different languages. Irreversible. The first trip was to Zurich. 6 months after Lyra was born. The clinic sat high in the Swiss Alps, all glass and steel, looking more like a spaceship than a hospital. They had machines Elias had never seen before. Scanners that hummed like they were reading your soul. Dr. Werner was confident. Almost cocky. "We've restored vision to patients the world gave up on," he said. "Bring your daughter. We'll see what others couldn't." Elias flew Lyra there on a private jet. She was so small then. Just a baby wrapped in blankets, her eyes closed against a world she'd never see. The test took 3 days. Needles. Lights. Machines that beeped and whirred while Lyra cried in a language only fear understands. On the 3rd day, Dr. Werner sat across from Elias in an office overlooking snow-capped mountains. "I'm sorry, Mr. Montreux. The optic nerves are severely underdeveloped. There's nothing we can do." Elias stared at him. "Nothing?" Dr. Werner folded his hands on the desk. His voice was calm. Rehearsed. Like he'd said these words 1,000 times before. "Sometimes nature makes mistakes we cannot fix. You need to prepare yourself. Your daughter will never see." Elias didn't believe him. He couldn't. So he went to Boston. Massachusetts General Hospital. The best in America, they said. Dr. Patel was younger. Hungrier. She talked about experimental gene therapy. Cutting-edge research. Clinical trials that were showing promise. For 3 weeks they ran tests. Lyra was 2 years old by then. Old enough to feel the fear. Old enough to cry when strangers in white coats touched her. Elias held her hand through every procedure. Whispered promises he wasn't sure he could keep. "It's going to be okay, sweetheart. Daddy's going to fix this." But Dr. Patel couldn't fix it either. "The gene therapy won't work on her type of damage," she said. "I wish I had better news." Elias spent $400,000 in Boston. He left with the same answer he'd arrived with. "Nothing we can do." Next was Tel Aviv. A research institute that specialized in retinal regeneration. Dr. Cohen was brilliant. Published in every major medical journal. He'd restored partial vision to a 12-year-old girl in Jerusalem. Surely he could help Lyra. The tests were worse this time. More invasive. Lyra was 3.5. She understood pain now. Understood that these places hurt her. She screamed when they tried to sedate her. "Daddy, no. Daddy, please." Elias held her while she cried herself to sleep. 2 months later, Dr. Cohen delivered his verdict in a voice that sounded like he was reading a grocery list. Complete bilateral optic nerve hypoplasia. Congenital. Irreversible. "I'm sorry, but there's nothing more we can do." Elias felt something break inside him that day. But he didn't stop. Singapore. Tokyo. Berlin. London. Mumbai. Specialist after specialist. Procedure after procedure. Lyra was 4. Then 5. Then 6. And every single time the answer was the same. The language got colder. More clinical. More detached. Permanent visual impairment. Accept the diagnosis. Focus on adaptive technologies. One doctor in London didn't even look Elias in the eye when he said it. "Mr. Montreux, you're traumatizing your daughter with these constant tests. It's time to let her adapt to her reality." Adapt. As if blindness was something you just got used to. As if his daughter's darkness was acceptable because some textbook said so. Elias spent over $6 million chasing hope. And all he got back was the same rehearsed speech. The same cold indifference. "Your daughter is blind. There's nothing we can do." But there was one thing Elias noticed. One thing that nagged at him late at night when he couldn't sleep. None of them physically examined her eye. They scanned it. Photographed it. Ran it through machines that cost more than most houses. But no one ever pulled back her eyelid and looked. Really looked. Elias mentioned it once to a specialist in Munich. Dr. Hoffman frowned like Elias had insulted his intelligence. "Mr. Montreux, we have technology that can see things the human eye cannot. Manual inspection is outdated. Unnecessary." Elias nodded. Apologized for questioning. These were experts. They had degrees. credentials, walls full of awards. Who was he to doubt them? So he silenced the thought. And Lyra kept rubbing her left eye. It started when she was 3. A habit the doctors called neurological. Reflexive. Meaningless. But it got worse over time. By the time she was 6, Lyra rubbed her eyes so hard she left red marks on her face. She'd wake up in the middle of the night, her tiny fingers pressed against her eyelid like she was trying to dig something out. Elias asked about it in Singapore. Just dry eye behavior, the specialist said. Common in blind children. He asked again in Tokyo. A self-soothing mechanism, they told him. Nothing to worry about. He asked one more time in Boston. Mr. Montreux, you're looking for problems that don't exist. Your daughter is managing her condition. Let her be. So Elias stopped asking. And the Montreux estate adapted to Lyra's blindness the way a body adapts to a wound. Furniture never moved. Not an inch. Lyra had memorized every step, every corner, every surface. Moving a chair could mean a fall. A bruise. Another failure. The staff were trained to be invisible. No sudden sounds. No unexpected voices. They learned to announce themselves before entering a room. It's Marie, Miss Lyra. I'm here to bring your lunch. It's Thomas, Miss Lyra. I'm just cleaning the hallway. The estate became a museum of silence. No mirrors anywhere. What was the point? Lyra would never see her reflection. No bright colors. No artwork. Just neutral tones that blended into nothing. Even the gardens outside were maintained in silence. Gardeners worked with hand tools instead of loud machines. Everything was controlled. Predictable. Safe. And completely, suffocatingly empty. Elias watched his daughter navigate the world like a ghost. She counted steps. Traced walls with her fingertips. Listened for the vibrations of footsteps to know when someone was near. She never complained. Never asked why she couldn't see. She just existed in the darkness like it was all she'd ever known. And Elias died a little more each day. Some nights, he'd stand outside her room and watch her sleep. She looked peaceful then. Like maybe in her dreams she could see. He'd think about Seraphine. About how she'd stroke Lyra's hair and whisper, "She's going to be extraordinary, Elias. I can feel it." But Seraphine never got to see if she was right. And Elias was failing them both. Hope and despair fought inside him like wolves. Some days hope won. He'd read about a new treatment. A breakthrough. A miracle. Other days despair dragged him under. He'd look at his daughter rubbing her eye until it turned red and he'd think, what if this is it? What if there really is nothing anyone can do? But even on those dark days he couldn't accept it. He couldn't accept that the best minds in the world, with their fancy degrees and expensive machines, were right. There had to be something they were missing. There had to be. One evening in late autumn, Elias sat in his study going through another stack of medical reports. The words blurred together. Congenital. Irreversible. Permanent. His assistant knocked softly on the door. "Mr. Montreux? The new night cleaner starts tomorrow. Just wanted to confirm you approved the hire." Elias didn't look up from the papers. "Yes, fine. Whatever the agency recommended. Her name is Maribel Kova. She'll be working the overnight shift. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Elias waved his hand dismissively. "That's fine, Gerald. Thank you." The assistant left quietly. Elias went back to his reports. Back to his files. Back to the endless search for an answer that always seemed just out of reach. He had no idea that the answer was about to walk through his door carrying a mop and a bucket. He had no idea that tomorrow night, everything would begin to change. And he had no idea that sometimes, the people with the most credentials see the least. Because they're too busy looking at machines. Instead of looking at the child. Maribel Kova learned about loss on a Tuesday. She was 14 when the factory explosion took both her parents. One minute they were packing their lunch pails for the evening shift. The next they were gone. The authorities called it a gas leak. Faulty equipment. Tragic accident. They gave Maribel a check for $12,000 and a sympathy card signed by people she'd never met. Like money could replace the sound of her mother's laugh. Like a card could bring back her father's rough hands braiding her hair before school. But the money did one thing. It kept Maribel and her 8-year-old brother Victor from ending up in the system. Barely. She was 20 now. Victor was 14. The same age she'd been when the world split open. The $12,000 was long gone. Rent. Food. Victor's asthma medication that cost more each year. School supplies. Shoes that wore out too fast because he was growing like a weed. Maribel worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat. Morning shift at the corner bakery. Afternoon housekeeping at a budget motel. And now, thanks to an agency that asked no questions, Night cleaning at an estate she couldn't pronounce the name of. Montreux. The woman at the agency said it like it should mean something. Very wealthy family, she'd said. Very private. You'll work alone. No interaction with the residents. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Clean the main floors. Don't touch anything personal. Don't make noise. The pay was almost triple what Maribel made anywhere else. She didn't ask why. She just said yes. Because Victor needed new inhalers. Because the rent was due in 8 days. Because fear of losing stability was a weight she carried in her chest every single moment of every single day. So on a cold November night, Maribel stood outside the Montreux estate with a mop, a bucket, and a key card the agency had given her. The house looked like something from a magazine. All glass and sharp angles. Lights glowing soft behind enormous windows. She swiped the card. The door clicked open. And Maribel stepped into another world. The halls were silent. Not peaceful silent. Heavy silent. Like the air itself was holding its breath. Her footsteps echoed on marble floors even though she tried to walk quietly. Everything gleamed. Spotless. She wondered what they needed her for. Then she saw the kitchen. Used dishes in the sink. Crumbs on the counter. A forgotten glass of milk turning sour. Rich people's messes looked the same as poor people's messes. Just in fancier rooms. Maribel tied back her hair and got to work. She cleaned the kitchen first. Then the dining room. The sitting room with furniture that probably cost more than she'd make in 5 years. It was past midnight when she moved toward the east wing. The agency had given her specific instructions. Clean the common areas. Hallways. Main bathrooms. Stay out of the bedrooms. But as she pushed her cart past a partially open door, she heard something. Not crying. Not talking. Just breathing. Small. Rhythmic. Maribel stopped. She shouldn't look. The agency had been clear. No interaction with residents. But something pulled at her. She pushed the door open just a few inches more. A little girl sat on the floor in the corner of a massive bedroom. Maybe 6 years old. Curly hair falling around her face. Eyes closed. She was alone. Completely alone in a room the size of Maribel's entire apartment. Maribel's heart squeezed. Where were this child's parents? Why was she awake at midnight sitting on the floor by herself? The girl brought her hand to her face. Rubbed her left eye. Hard. So hard her whole head tilted with the pressure. When she pulled her hand away, Maribel could see the red marks around the eye. Raw. Irritated. The girl did it again. Rubbing. Pressing. Like she was trying to get something out. Maribel had seen that before. Years ago. Back in her village before her family moved to the city. There was a boy. 7 years old. Everyone said he was blind in one eye. Born that way. The local doctors had examined him. Told his parents there was nothing to be done. But the boy kept rubbing his eye. Kept complaining it hurt. Then a traveling nurse came through the village. She was old. Trained in some rural medical tradition that city doctors laughed at. She looked at the boy's eye. Really looked. Pulled back his eyelid and peered close. And she found it. A tiny growth. So small the other doctors had missed it. Blocking his vision. Pressing against the inside of his eyelid. The nurse removed it with a steady hand and basic tools. 3 days later the boy could see. The whole village talked about it for months. The miracle. The blind child who wasn't really blind. Maribel's mother had said something that stuck with her. Sometimes the experts are so busy looking at the big picture, they miss what's right in front of them. Maribel watched the little girl rub her eye again. Watched the way she flinched when she pressed too hard. Don't be stupid, Maribel told herself. This is a billionaire's daughter. She's probably seen the best doctors in the world. But still, something felt wrong. For the next 3 nights, Maribel watched. She didn't mean to. She was supposed to clean and leave. But every night the girl was there. Awake. Alone. Rubbing her eye. On the second night, Maribel noticed something else. The girl never opened her eyes. Not once. Blind, Maribel realized. The little girl is blind. Her chest tightened. No wonder the house felt so heavy. No wonder everything was arranged just so. No wonder the staff walked on eggshells. But on the third night, Maribel saw something that made her stop breathing. The girl was sitting near the window. Moonlight streaming in. She was rubbing her left eye. The same routine. But when Maribel moved her cleaning cart, the wheels squeaked. The girl's head turned sharply toward the sound. And for just a second, just a fraction of a moment, her left eye cracked open. Not much. Just a sliver. And she flinched. Flinched at the moonlight coming through the window. Maribel's heart hammered. Blind people didn't flinch at light. Did they? She watched closer after that. looking for things she had no business looking for. The left eye watered constantly. The right one didn't. The girl only rubbed the left eye, never the right. And when Maribel moved to the side, angling herself so the moonlight hit the girl's face differently, she saw something. A shadow. Behind the left eye. Something dark. Something that shouldn't be there. Maribel wasn't a doctor. She'd barely finished high school. She cleaned toilets and mopped floors and scraped by on tips and night wages. Who was she to think she saw something the best doctors in the world had missed? She was nobody. But the memory of that boy in her village wouldn't leave her alone. The blind child who wasn't really blind. What? No. Maribel shook her head. Pushed her cart down the hall. Got back to work. Doctors must know better. They had machines. Education. Years of training. She had a mop. But on the fourth night, everything changed. Maribel was cleaning the hallway outside the girl's room. Trying not to look. Trying to mind her own business. The door was open wider than usual. The girl sat in her usual spot on the floor. Rubbing her eye. Red marks already forming. And then she stopped. Her head tilted. Like she was listening. Maribel froze. The girl stood up. Felt her way along the wall. Counted her steps the way someone who'd memorized every inch of the room would do. She moved toward the door. Toward Maribel. Maribel should have left. Should have pushed her cart away. Stayed invisible like the agency instructed. But she didn't. The girl stopped just inside the doorway. Her face turned in Maribel's direction. "You're the new cleaner," she said softly. Maribel's throat went dry. "Yes." The girl was quiet for a moment. Then she brought her hand up to her left eye again. Rubbed it. Harder than before. When she pulled her hand away, there were tears on her cheeks. Not sad tears. Pain tears. And in a voice so small it barely counted as sound, the girl whispered, "My eye hurts." Maribel's world tilted. Because those weren't the words of a child who'd accepted her blindness. Those were the words of a child who knew something was wrong. And nobody was listening. Elias Montreux left for Dubai on a Thursday. The merger couldn't wait. 17 months of negotiations. $42 million on the table. His presence was non-negotiable. He kissed Lyra's forehead before he left. "I'll be back in 3 days, sweetheart. Marie will take care of you." Lyra nodded. Said nothing. Just turned her face back toward the window she couldn't see. Elias tried to ignore the weight in his chest as he walked away. The storm hit that night. Not the merger. That went fine. Handshakes and champagne in a glass tower overlooking the Persian Gulf. The real storm was 7,000 miles away. It started with wind. The kind that rattled windows and bent trees sideways. Then rain. Sheets of it. Hammering the Montreux estate like the sky was trying to break through the roof. The power flickered at 10:47 p.m. By 11:15 the backup generator kicked in. But half the estate stayed dark. Including the east wing. Including Lyra's room. Marie, the live-in housekeeper, brought candles and flashlights. Checked on Lyra twice. The girl was fine. Sitting on her bed. Quiet as always. Marie had worked for the Montreux for 4 years. She knew the routine. Don't fuss over Lyra. Don't hover. The girl needs space and silence. So Marie left her alone. By midnight the storm was screaming. And so was Lyra. Maribel heard it the second she swiped her key card. A sound that made her blood freeze. Not crying. Not whimpering. Screaming. Raw. Animal. The kind of sound that came from a pain too big for words. She dropped her cleaning supplies and ran. The east wing was pitch black. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls. Maribel followed the sound. Lyra's door was closed. Maribel didn't knock. Didn't hesitate. She burst in. The girl was on the floor. Curled into herself. Both hands pressed against her left eye. Rocking back and forth. "It hurts, it hurts, it hurts." The words came out in a broken chant. Over and over. Maribel dropped to her knees beside her. "Lyra. Lyra, I'm here. Let me see." "No, no, no." Lyra's voice cracked. "It hurts so much." Maribel's hands shook as she tried to pull Lyra's hands away from her face. The girl resisted. Pressed harder. When Maribel finally got her hands free, she saw it. The left eye was swollen. The skin around it angry red. Tears streaming down Lyra's face. And the girl was rubbing it. Clawing at it. Like something inside was trying to get out. Maribel's mind raced. Where was the staff? Where was anyone? She ran to the door. Shouted into the dark hallway. "Help. Someone help." Nothing. The storm swallowed her voice. She ran back to Lyra. The girl was whimpering now. A softer sound. Worse somehow. "Please," Lyra whispered. "Please make it stop." Maribel felt something crack inside her chest. This wasn't normal pain. This wasn't dry eye or neurological reflexes or whatever clinical nonsense the doctors had called it. This was real. And it was getting worse. Maribel thought about calling an ambulance. But the storm was too strong. The roads would be flooded. It would take too long. She thought about finding Marie. But what could Marie do? Call the same doctors who'd spent 6 years saying nothing was wrong? And then Maribel remembered something. A moment from 5 years ago. When Victor was 9. He'd fallen off his bike. Cut his arm open on a chain-link fence. Bleeding bad. Maribel had no money for the emergency room. No insurance. No options. So she'd done it herself. Cleaned the wound with vodka and a torn t-shirt. Held the skin together with butterfly bandages she bought at a dollar store. Wrapped it tight. Victor had cried. Begged her to stop. It hurt too much. But Maribel had kept going. Because sometimes the only choice is the terrifying one. The wound healed. Barely a scar. And Victor got to keep his arm. Maribel looked at Lyra now. At this tiny girl writhing in pain that no one else seemed to see. She did the math in her head. If she did nothing, Lyra would suffer. Maybe all night. Maybe longer. If she did something, if she was wrong, she'd lose her job. Maybe worse. Rich people had lawyers. Rich people pressed charges. She could end up in prison for touching this girl. But if she was right, she could help. Maribel closed her eyes. Heard her mother's voice from across the years. Sometimes the experts are so busy looking at the big picture, they miss what's right in front of them. She opened her eyes. Lyra, listen to me. The girl's breath hitched. She turned her face toward Maribel's voice. I think there's something in your eye. Something the doctors missed. Lyra went still. I'm not a doctor, Maribel continued. Her voice shook. I'm just a cleaner. But I've seen this before. And I think I can help. Lyra's fingers dug into Maribel's arm. It hurts so much. I know, sweetheart. I know. Maribel's mind raced. She needed light. Tools. Something to sterilize her hands. She left Lyra for 30 seconds. Ran through the dark halls. Found the main bathroom. There. A medicine cabinet. Stocked like a small pharmacy. Alcohol wipes. Gauze. Medical tape. A small pen light. And tweezers. Sterile. Still in the package. Maribel grabbed everything. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She ran back to Lyra's room. Set everything on the floor. The storm rattled the windows. Rain hammered against the glass. Maribel ripped open an alcohol wipe. Cleaned her hands. Once. Twice. 3 times. She unwrapped the tweezers. The pen light. Her breath came in short gasps. What are you doing? This is insane. You're going to hurt her. You're going to make it worse. But Lyra's voice cut through the panic. Please. One word. So much trust in it. Maribel's hands steadied. She knelt in front of Lyra. The girl's face was tilted up. Eyes closed. Tears still streaming. This might hurt, Maribel said softly. But I'll be as gentle as I can. Lyra nodded. Such a small movement. But it meant everything. Maribel turned on the pen light. Held it up. I need you to try to open your left eye for me. Just a little. Lyra's face scrunched. She tried. The eye cracked open. Just barely. And flinched. The light hurt her. Which meant something was there. Something was reacting. Maribel's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Okay, sweetheart. I'm going to touch your eyelid now. She reached up with trembling fingers. Lyra's skin was hot. Inflamed. Maribel had done this once before. On Victor. When he'd gotten something stuck under his eyelid. But this was different. This was a child who'd been told she was blind. A child whose father had spent millions searching for an answer. And here was Maribel. Nobody. Nothing. About to do what 17 specialists across the world hadn't done. She was either about to save this girl. Or ruin her life. Maribel took a breath. Pulled back the upper ocular fold. And froze. There. Right there. Behind the eyelid. Pressed against the eyeball. Something white. Fleshy. Unnatural. A growth. Not huge. But big enough. Sitting right where the optic nerve should be processing light. Blocking everything. Maribel's hands started shaking again. Because she'd been right. The doctors with their degrees and their machines and their confidence. They'd been wrong. And this little girl had been suffering in darkness for 6 years. Because no one thought to look. Really look. Lyra's voice was small. Scared. What is it? Maribel's throat closed. She couldn't speak. The storm screamed outside. And inside, in the dark of Lyra Montreux's bedroom, A woman who cleaned floors for a living stared at something that shouldn't be there. Something that had stolen a child's sight. Something she had no idea if she could remove. But she was going to try. Maribel had never prayed before. Not when her parents died. Not when Victor couldn't breathe and the ambulance took too long. Not when the rent was overdue and the landlord threatened eviction. But she prayed now. Please, please let me not hurt her. The membrane sat behind Lyra's eyelid like a parasite. Translucent. Faint. Pressing against the eyeball with enough pressure to distort everything. Maribel steadied the penlight between her teeth. Held the tweezers in her right hand. Her left hand kept Lyra's eyelid pulled back. This is going to feel strange, she whispered around the penlight. But you have to stay very still. Lyra's whole body was rigid. But she nodded. Okay, sweetheart. Here we go. Maribel brought the tweezers close. Her hand shook so badly she had to stop. Breathe. Start again. The membrane was attached at the edge. Where the eyelid met the eye socket. She touched it with the tip of the tweezers. Lyra flinched. I know. Almost there. Maribel gripped the edge. So carefully. Like trying to pick up a single thread. And pulled. The membrane resisted. It was stuck. Adhered. Maybe growing there for years. Lyra whimpered. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Maribel pulled a little harder. The membrane stretched. Started to separate. And Lyra screamed. Not pain. Not fear. Something else. Light. The word came out strangled. Desperate. Light. I see light. Maribel's vision blurred with tears. But she didn't stop. She kept pulling. Millimeter by millimeter. The membrane came free slowly. Peeling away from tissue that had grown around it. Lyra was shaking. Gasping. Shapes. I see shapes. Almost there, Maribel whispered. Almost. One more pull. The membrane released. Completely. Maribel held it in the tweezers. A small, grotesque piece of flesh that had no business being inside a human eye. She dropped it onto the gauze beside her. And looked at Lyra. The girl's left eye was open. Wide open. For the first time in 6 years. The iris was dilated. Adjusting. The eye was bloodshot. Inflamed from years of pressure. But it was moving. Tracking. Seeing. Lyra's breath came in sharp gasps. Her head turned. Slowly. Taking in the room. I can see, she whispered. I can see the window. The curtains. They're blue. Cream, Maribel said. Her voice broke. They're cream-colored. Lyra's eye found Maribel's face. And for the first time in her life, Lyra saw the person speaking to her. You're crying, Lyra said. Why are you crying? Maribel couldn't answer. She was sobbing now. Full body sobs that shook her shoulders. Because it worked. Because this little girl could see. Because 6 years. 6 years of darkness that never should have happened. Lyra reached up with one small hand. Touched Maribel's face. You're pretty, she said softly. And Maribel broke. She pulled Lyra into her arms and held her while the storm raged outside and the world tilted on its axis. Neither of them heard the footsteps in the hall. Neither of them saw the security guard until he was already in the room. What the hell? His voice was sharp. Shocked. He saw Maribel. Saw Lyra. Saw the blood-tinged gauze on the floor. Get away from her. He grabbed Maribel by the arm. Yanked her back. Lyra cried out. No. Don't hurt her. The guard's radio crackled. He was shouting into it. I need backup in the East Wing. No. Someone's attacked the girl. I didn't attack her. Maribel's voice was hoarse. I helped her. She can see. The guard wasn't listening. He forced Maribel's hands behind her back. Zip-tied her wrists. Another guard arrived. Then Marie, the housekeeper. Her face went white when she saw the scene. Oh my God. Oh my God. What did you do? Lyra was screaming now. She didn't hurt me. She helped me. I can see. But no one was looking at Lyra. They were looking at Maribel. At the foreign woman with no credentials who'd somehow gotten into the little girl's room. Who'd touched her. Done something to her eye. Marie's hands shook as she pulled out her phone. I'm calling Mr. Montreux. No. Maribel started. But it was too late. Elias Montreux was somewhere over the Atlantic when his phone rang. He answered on the second ring. What is it? Marie's voice was hysterical. Mr. Montreux, something's happened. The night cleaner, she did something to Lyra. We've detained her. We're calling the police. Elias went cold. Is Lyra hurt? Marie hesitated. I don't know. She's saying strange things. She's saying she can see. What? She keeps saying she can see. But that's impossible. The cleaner must have done something, traumatized her. Put Lyra on the phone. Pause. Shuffling. Then Lyra's voice. Small but clear. Daddy? Elias's chest constricted. Sweetheart, are you okay? Daddy, I can see. Silence. Daddy. The woman who cleans at night. She found something in my eye. And she took it out. And now I can see. I can see shapes and light and your picture. On my nightstand. I can see you, Daddy. Elias couldn't breathe. Put Marie back on. More shuffling. Mr. Montreux. Take Lyra to the hospital. No. Not the police. The hospital. Have them examine her eye. I'm turning the plane around. But sir, the cleaner. I don't care about the cleaner. Take my daughter to the hospital. I'll be there in 6 hours. He hung up. The private jet turned mid-flight. And Elias Montreux sat in his leather seat staring at nothing, trying to process what his daughter had just said. She can see. The hospital was chaos. Lyra was rushed into an examination room. Maribel was left in a security office. Still zip-tied. Still in shock. Dr. Patel, the same specialist who'd seen Lyra in Boston, happened to be consulting at the same hospital. She was called in immediately. When she examined Lyra's eye, her face went slack. This is impossible. The girl's optic nerve was functioning, processing light, transmitting signals. But the scans showed severe hypoplasia, underdevelopment. This shouldn't be working. Dr. Patel ordered new scans, compared them to the old ones from years ago. And then she saw it. In the archived files. Buried in a note from a junior radiologist who'd been overruled by senior staff. Small mass detected behind left ocular fold. Possibly benign. Recommend monitoring. Recommend monitoring. Not removal. Not urgent intervention. Monitoring. Dr. Patel's hands trembled as she pulled up more files. The note had been dismissed. Categorized as insignificant. Because the senior doctors had already diagnosed Lyra as irreversibly blind. And once that diagnosis was made, everything else was filtered through that lens. The mass wasn't important. It was just an anomaly. Something to monitor. Except no one ever monitored it. Because Lyra was blind. And blind children didn't need their eyes examined for treatable obstructions. They just needed adaptive technology. Dr. Patel sat down hard in her chair. She'd been one of those doctors. She'd looked at Lyra Montreux and seen an irreversible condition. She'd never thought to check for something simple. Something fixable. And a child had lived in darkness for 6 years because of it. The hospital called Elias with the results. He was still on the plane. 4 hours out. Mr. Montreux, your daughter's vision has been restored. Partially. It's still early, but the prognosis is excellent. The mass that was removed appears to have been blocking her optic nerve. Once removed, the nerve began functioning. Silence on the other end. The doctor continued. We're reviewing the old scans now. It appears there was a note, years ago, about the mass. But it was categorized as non-urgent. More silence. Mr. Montreux? Elias's voice was quiet. Deadly quiet. You're telling me my daughter could have seen. All this time. Someone had just looked. The doctor swallowed hard. We're still investigating. Elias hung up. When he arrived at the hospital 6 hours later, he went straight to Lyra's room. She was sitting up in bed. A patch over her left eye. The right one still closed. But she turned when she heard his footsteps. Daddy. She knew it was him. Not by counting steps or listening to breathing patterns. Because she'd seen him walk in. Elias crossed the room in 3 strides. Pulled her into his arms. And said nothing. Because there were no words. Later, he stood in the hallway listening to Dr. Patel explain. The mass. The note. The oversight. We're deeply sorry, Mr. Montreux. We'll be conducting a full review. Elias held up his hand. Stop. Dr. Patel fell silent. Where is the woman who removed it? The cleaner? Her name. Maribel Kova. She's being held in security. We haven't called the police yet. We weren't sure. Release her. Dr. Patel blinked. Sir? Release her. No. What? No. Dr. Patel nodded quickly and left. Elias stood in the empty hallway. His daughter could see. Because a woman who cleaned floors had done what 17 specialists across the world hadn't. She'd looked. Really looked. And found what should never have been there. Elias walked out of the hospital without speaking to anyone else. He got into his car. And drove into the night, his hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white. Because he didn't know if what he felt was gratitude. Or rage. Maribel was released at 4:37 a.m. No explanation. No apology. Just a security guard cutting the zip ties and pointing toward the exit. She walked out of the hospital into the pre-dawn cold with her wrists bruised and her hands still shaking. She had no phone, no wallet. She'd left everything in her cleaning cart back at the estate. So she walked 17 blocks through empty streets, past closed storefronts and sleeping houses, past a world that had no idea what had just happened. By the time she reached her apartment, the sun was starting to rise. Victor was still asleep, 14 years old and sprawled across the couch because he'd fallen asleep waiting for her to come home. Maribel stood in the doorway watching him breathe. She'd almost lost everything tonight. Almost ended up in jail for trying to help. But she'd do it again. 1,000 times over. She was making coffee when someone knocked on the door. Maribel froze. Police. Had to be. They'd changed their minds. They were coming to arrest her after all. She opened the door slowly. Elias Montreux stood in the hallway of her run-down apartment building looking completely out of place in his $1,000 suit. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Elias did something Maribel never expected. He dropped to his knees. Right there in the hallway. On the stained carpet that smelled like mildew and someone's burnt dinner from 3 days ago. Maribel took a step back. What are you? Elias's voice cracked when he spoke. I'm sorry. 2 words. But they carried the weight of 6 years. I'm sorry, he said again. I'm sorry I didn't see it. I'm sorry I trusted credentials over instinct. I'm sorry I let my daughter suffer because I was too arrogant to question the experts. Maribel's throat closed. Elias looked up at her. His eyes were red. Exhausted. You saved her. You, a woman I never even spoke to. A woman I didn't even know existed in my house. You saved my daughter when I couldn't. Mr. Montreux. Elias. What? My name is Elias. And I need you to know something. He stood up slowly. Like his legs didn't quite work right anymore. I spent $6 million searching for an answer. I flew Lyra to 17 countries. Put her through dozens of procedures. I had the best doctors. The best technology. The best everything money could buy. His voice broke. And I never thought to just look. Really look. The way you did. Maribel didn't know what to say. So she said the only thing that felt true. She was in pain. I couldn't just leave her like that. Elias nodded slowly. I know. And that's the difference between us. You saw a child hurting and acted. I saw a problem to be solved and threw money at it until I was told there was no solution. He reached into his jacket. Pulled out a folder. Maribel stiffened. I don't want money. Elias's expression shifted. Something like respect crossed his face. It's not money. It's documentation. Medical records. Testimony from Dr. Patel. Evidence that 17 specialists missed what you found in one night. Why are you giving this to me? Because there are going to be lawsuits. Elias's jaw tightened. Against the hospitals. The doctors. The whole system that failed my daughter. And I want you to know that none of this will touch you. You won't be sued. You won't be charged. You'll be protected. He paused. And compensated. I told you. Not for what you did. Elias's voice was firm. For what was taken from you. Your job. Your safety. Your dignity. You were zip-tied and treated like a criminal for saving a child's life. Maribel's hands trembled. I just want to go back to my life. You can. Elias stepped back toward the stairs. But your life doesn't have to stay the same. Victor's tuition at the academy. Your rent paid for the next 2 years. A position, if you want it, managing household operations at the estate. Not cleaning. Managing. He turned. Think about it. No pressure. But you deserve more than scraping by for doing what's right. Then he was gone. Maribel stood in her doorway holding the folder and trying to remember how to breathe. Within 3 weeks, the medical board opened formal investigations into 7 specialists across 4 countries. Dr. Patel resigned from her position at Massachusetts General. She released a public statement admitting her failure, calling for systemic reform, advocating for less reliance on imaging technology and more hands-on patient examination. The hospital in Boston settled with Elias for an undisclosed amount. All of it went into a foundation. The Lyra Montreux Foundation for Diagnostic Oversight. Its mission, to train medical students to see what machines miss. 2 of the specialists fought the lawsuits. Lost. 3 others settled quietly and never practiced again. The news didn't make international headlines. Rich people's problems rarely did unless there was scandal involved. But in medical journals and hospital ethics boards, the case became infamous. The blind girl who wasn't. A cautionary tale about diagnostic certainty. About the danger of accepting an initial diagnosis without question. About what happens when experts stop being curious. Maribel watched it all from a distance. She declined the management position, took the rent assistance, put Victor in the academy, and went back to cleaning. Different buildings, better hours, but still the same work, because it was honest, and she was good at it, and there was dignity in doing a job well, no matter what the job was. But she visited Lyra. Once a week at first, then twice, then whenever Lyra asked, which was often. 3 months after that night in the storm, Maribel stood in the Montreux garden watching Lyra chase butterflies. The girl had been obsessed with them since she'd first seen one 2 weeks ago. They're so colorful, she'd said with wonder, and they fly like they're dancing. Now she ran through the garden trying to follow them, laughing when they landed on flowers just out of reach. Elias stood beside Maribel, watching his daughter with an expression that was equal parts joy and grief. "She's making up for lost time," he said quietly. Maribel nodded. "She's happy." "She is." Elias's voice tightened. "But I keep thinking about the 6 years. About what she missed. First steps in the light. Colors. Faces. Her mother's face." His breath hitched on the last word. Seraphine died when Lyra was a baby. She never got to see her mother. Maribel didn't have words for that, so she just stood with him in the silence. After a moment, Elias spoke again. "I've been going through old videos. From when Seraphine was alive. I'm going to show them to Lyra, so she can see her mother. Even if it's just on a screen. That's good. Is it?" Elias turned to her. "Or am I trying to give her something that will just hurt more? Showing her what she lost?" Maribel thought about her own mother. About the ache that never quite went away. Grief hurts no matter what. But love is worth the pain. Elias looked at her for a long moment. "You're very wise for someone so young." Maribel almost laughed. "I'm 20. I've been responsible for another human being since I was 14. You grow up fast when you have to. I'm realizing that." Elias's gaze returned to Lyra. "I thought I was protecting her by controlling everything. By searching for the perfect solution. By trusting only the most credentialed experts." He shook his head. "All I did was make her world smaller. You were doing your best. My best wasn't good enough." Maribel disagreed. But she didn't argue. Because Elias needed to sit with this. Needed to feel it. It was the only way he'd change. And he was changing. She could see it. The way he listened to Lyra now instead of talking over her. The way he asked her what she wanted instead of deciding for her. The way he'd started asking the gardener's opinion on the roses. The chef's thoughts on menu changes. He was learning to see the people he'd looked past his whole life. It was a slow transformation. But it was real. Lyra came running over. Out of breath. Face flushed with joy. "Maribel. Did you see? The yellow butterfly landed on my hand." "I saw." Maribel smiled. "What did it feel like?" "Like a whisper." Lyra's eyes went wide. "Like the tiniest whisper with wings." Elias knelt down beside his daughter. "You want to know something?" "What?" "Your mother loved butterflies too." Lyra's whole face lit up. "She did?" "She did. We used to have a garden full of them. Before she got sick." Lyra threw her arms around his neck. "Can we plant more? So Mama's butterflies come back?" Elias's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, sweetheart. We can do that." He held her for a long moment. And when he pulled back, Lyra looked at him carefully. Really looked. She reached up and touched his face. Traced the lines around his eyes. The gray in his hair. "You look tired, Daddy." Elias laughed. "It came out wet. I'm tired." "Then rest." Lyra said it so simply. Like it was obvious. Like the solution to exhaustion was just to stop running. Elias stared at his daughter. This 6-year-old who'd lived in darkness. Who'd been poked and prodded and flown around the world. Who'd suffered in silence because the experts said there was nothing wrong. And she was telling him to rest. He started crying. Not quietly. Not hidden away. Right there in the garden. In front of his daughter. In front of Maribel. Openly. Lyra didn't look scared. She just wrapped her arms around him again. "It's okay, Daddy. We're okay now." And for the first time in 6 years, Elias believed it. They were okay. Not because he'd fixed everything. Not because he'd found the right expert or spent enough money. But because someone had paid attention. Someone had seen what everyone else overlooked. Someone had cared enough to act when it would have been easier to walk away. Later that evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in colors Lyra was still learning the names of, she stood at the window with her father. "Daddy, look. The sky is turning pink." Elias wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "It's called sunset. Happens every day." "Every day?" Lyra's voice filled with wonder. "I can watch it every day? Every single day." Lyra leaned into him. I'm so glad I can see now. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. She looked up at him, studied his face in the fading light. I love you, Daddy. Elias kissed the top of her head. I love you too. And in that moment he understood something he'd missed for years. Miracles don't come from authority. They come from attention. From the people who notice, who care, who show up and do the work no one else wants to do. From a woman who cleaned while others slept, and saw what money never could.